Hi everyone, we are from Team 2 and today we will be discussing if Singapore portraying as adopting a unitarist than pluralist attitude to employment relations is justified or are times changing. I'm Afiqah and I will be presenting the introduction and strengths and weaknesses of the two approach. Shi Yuan will be presenting the perspective and differences of the approach. Geraldine will talk about the approach in the past, and Jinqiang will talk about the current approach, time changes, and summary. So let's start. Next. What is employment relations? So employment relations refers to the organization efforts to create and maintain a existing relationship positive with their employee. It's usually include employers, leaders, and unions. And how does employment relation relates to unitarists and pluralists? Is both of them are actually the aspects or ways to have employer relationship in business. So for unitarist approach, everyone in the organization, regardless of their position, shares the same goal and have the mutual cooperation to succeed. Decisions are usually done by one strong dominant, and when there is conflict within them, everyone is accountable for it. So they might have a difficulty to work together, such as a poor morale or lack of trust, but they do still be loyal towards their organization. And as for the pluralist approach, different position from the same organization holds the different theory and opinions, and they may not share the same goals. So when there is conflict among them, the issue will be acknowledged and solutions will be provided. So, but however, they are not loyal to their organization. Next slide. For next one will be the strength and the weaknesses. So since decisions are made by one person, Unitarist does validate the management power and authority. And as I mentioned before, it involves everyone having the same goals and outcome. And therefore, the organization will receive 100% cooperation and follow their leaders' rules and method. And everyone follows the same path, so there will be no biasness or fairness favorites within the organization. And when they have conflicts, it will be seen as a minor issue, and they do have protocols or steps to follow in solving the issues. But since the procedure of solving the issue is given, right, it may not be helpful and tend to neglect the conflict. So questions about the employee's right, such as the increasing salary or how secure is the job is, will be neglected. And this is because they are more of doing as a team and not as an individual. So in my introduction, I mentioned that about involving the union, and unitarists view them as a competitor. This is because union likes to have an alliance with a strong and loyal employee to overtake the organization. And for the next slide, the pluralists believe that the way they to achieve the good industrial relation is to acknowledge that various groups of employees have different requirements and make different demands. They are good in compromising and bargaining, and in order to solve a conflict, they do collate different solutions and choose the best one. So pluralists are seen as a minor group, and therefore they create an alliance with union to give them an advantage, such as voting for a general issue among the other organization. On the other hand, accommodating their demands can be a problem. They might use their power wrongly, and receiving many opinions can cause another issue, as one of them might not be happy about not choosing their ideas or opinion. And when doing an agreement with the dominant group, they tend to agreeable to whatever they say instead of arguing it back. So pluralists do have a framework to solve their conflicts, and the outcome that they might not get what they want lah. And now I will pass to Shi Yuan for her perspective and differences.
Thank you, Afiqah. So I'm Shi Yuan. So I'll be talking about the unitarist perspective first. For unitarist perspectives views the place of work as being integrated and a harmonious entity which exists to serve a common purpose. According to this perspective, the management roles involve the provisions of strong leaderships and fostering of good communications. Workers have to be loyal to the firm that they work in management. This perspective sees unions as being competitors who compete for the loyalty of employees as well as their commitment. Therefore, unions are disliked. The philosophy suggests that conflicts is not an inherent factor in the place of the work. In the research from colleagues in 1998, conflict is an indicator of faulty communications in the organizations. Moving on, towards the end of the 20th century, a shift in the management of workers' relations has been experienced. The current focus emphasizes the strategies and integrated frameworks based on the commitment of the workers and the shared interests at the place of work. There are no opposing leaders in the organizations. Leaders act to promote the commitments and fidelity of employers to the organizations. Firms are seen as composing teams which work together to reach mutual goals. Therefore, conflicts pertaining to interest does not exist between employees and management, as according to research by Hyman and Manson in 1995. The unitarist frameworks holds that workers and managers can pull together to achieve common objectives, values, and interests. The management has shown strong leadership to meet the goals set by the organizations. The other point that forms the basis of unitarists is that the activities of trade unions are not legitimate. Therefore, trade unions are not seen as essential elements in managing employees and the conflicts in the organization. In this case, conflicts are negatively portrayed as they are regarded to be dysfunctional and a sign that there is a lack of loyalty which is harmful to the organization's success. Next, I'm going to talk about the pluralist perspective. In this pluralist perspective, firms are perceived to have been made up of powerful subgroups that are divisions in roles and goals. Power is distributed among major bargaining groups in the organizations so that no party take advantage or manipulate the offer. The philosophies underlying this framework is that enterprise or organizations have people with unique interests, objectives, and aspirations. It is also suggested that employment relationships in organizations are open-ended and intermediate, which create structures anonymism. So what is structure anonymism? It is a basic aspect of the employment relationships which shapes how day-to-day relations are handled, but it's not something which fits directly into interests of the parties. Moving on, the theory cites that the state's roles as being that of guiding public interest, protections of the weak, and the restraining power for the strong. According to this perspective, unions are viewed as legitimate representatives that represent the interests of employees. This perspective sees potentials for creating conflict in the labor market as well as in the workplace. It may result in theories of pluralism is unclear and power is not evenly diffused. According to this perspective, conflicts must exist in organizations because competing interests are present. It can come up in organizations can be beneficial to the organizations where these conflicts are identified and put under control by using the responses. The management acts as a mediator between the perceived competitors. Lastly, trade unions have larger backing in the representations of workers as they aid employees in emphasizing their power in decision making in the research from Collin and Terry in 2010. As what I've shared earlier in the previous slide, I have drawn out the overview of the difference between unitarists and pluralists in the chart below. So first, for the definition of unitarists, a perspective of and shared interest of all members of the organizations, whereas pluralist is made up of divisions, subgroups having their own legitimate interests. Second, goal and interest. Unitarists share common interests and goals, emphasize on efficiencies and productivity. Whereas pluralists, conflicting interests and goals tend to pursue in many ways. Third, conflicts. Unitarist conflicts viewed as dysfunctional, arises from poor communications and leadership. Whereas pluralist conflicts are acknowledged and are even desirable. Resolutions of conflicts rather than occurrence should be accepted and dealt with and a compromise negotiated. 4. Criticisms. Unitarist management does not have the final say. Conflicts are not addressed definitively. Pluralists, avoiding unnecessary conflict, impose self-rigidities in managing the relationship. Lastly, on the view of unions, unitarists welcome Americans' instructions as unions will have to gain employees' favors, whereas pluralists provide mechanisms that legitimate employees' rights. So now I will pass on the next slide to Geraldine.
Thanks, Shi Yuan. So now we'll be talking about the unitarist versus pluralist business in Singapore in the past. So in the past, business adopt unitarism approach, and study conducted by the Ministry of Manpower suggests that most business adopted unitarism earns a significant profit. Companies are investing to develop unitarist approach for a strong organization infrastructure, and companies are improving relationship between their staff in order to achieve common goals as to promote organization reputation. Moving forward, there are 5 different periods in the post-war development in Singapore in the past. So in 1945 to 1962 is the Marxist period, and 1963 to 1971 will be the transition period. And 1972 to 1986 will be the income policy period, and 1987 to 1997 will be the pluralist period, and 1998 to current will be the from pluralism to bargain corporatism and back. So moving to the next slide. So pluralism business in Singapore in the 1987 to the 1997. So what happened was currency crisis struck in 1997, trading partners falling significantly, and GDP growth rate fell to 1.5% in 1998. And there's increase of unemployment. Pluralists were adopted during this period of time, so such as implementation of wage restraint, the adoption of measures to reduce business costs, and the reduction in labor costs. So next, I will be passed on to Jinqiang.
Thanks, Geraldine. So today I'm going to talk about the current approach for unitarist versus the pluralist business in Singapore. So compared to the past, business in Singapore right now actually adopting the aspect of unitarist attitude than the pluralist, as this helps to actually maintain a good positive attitude between the businesses and the clients. Most of the companies are also actually working towards the satisfactions of the employees. This will actually aid in increasing the quality of the production. Companies right now are actually using the unitarist approach to actually have a good employee relationships and the industrial relationships. In return, this actually creates a high level of competitions among businesses in Singapore with the purpose to actually acquire a global recognition. Moving on to the next slide. So the other reasons why businesses are actually adopting unitarism is because of this paternalistic approach. This approach actually anticipates the workers to be loyal to the company and the leaderships in the organization. The loyalties of the employees actually proves that they can be trustworthy and they are ready to do whatever it takes to actually make the company business prosper by achieving its objective. According to a research conducted in 2008, the majority of business in Singapore actually recruits workers who have proved that they are loyal to the company. Moving on to the next slide. So time changing. Is this change evidence in Singapore? The answer is yes. The pluralist approach is actually seen to build a stronger union management relationships and also a greater support for employees. These employers' benefits actually helps to lower the employees' absenteeism, the dispute between them, and also increase the trust and communication between the employers and employees. In Singapore, many businesses are actually adopting the aspects of the unitarist attitude instead of the pluralist to the employee relationships because of these several reasons. Moving on to the next slide. So yeah, to sum it up, we for the whole presentation we have actually explained two different type of theories between the comparing between the differences between the pluralists and the unitarists and the approach to the employment relations. Each approach is actually based on different aspects of the employment relationship with different value judgments. To sum it up, unitarist refers to the aspect where the workforce, management, or the group of workers working together for the welfare and the good of the organization. On the other hand, pluralism is where several groups of employees make different demands and have different requirements for the purpose of achieving good relations, industrial relations. So moving on to the next slide, we have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you all for your attention.